You're standing waist deep in the ocean, minding your own business, and suddenly a massive wave crashes into you, knocking you right backward toward the shore. We've all been there, right? It's a completely normal experience, but it actually brings up a really fascinating cognitive dissonance about how the physical world works.
Think about it for a second. When you get knocked over in that ocean, are you actually being pushed by a giant rush of water that has traveled for miles and miles across the sea just to knock you off your feet?
Misconception alert. The answer is actually no, not at all. The water itself isn't rushing at you from miles out at sea. In reality, the particles of water are mostly just staying right in one place, bobbing up and down. What you feel violently pushing you is actually the energy moving forward through the water. It's like a giant invisible force transferring through the ocean. The energy travels, but the water essentially stays put.
So by the end of this explainer, you're going to understand the true scientific definition of a wave, the core formula that dictates how fast it moves, how to actually apply that math to the real world, and the crucial differences between transverse and longitudinal waves. Let's just dive right in. So, first things first, what exactly is a wave? In physics, a wave is simply defined as a disturbance that propagates. And propagates just means it moves from the place it was created. Whether it's a rock you drop in a pond creating a ripple, a speaker cone vibrating to blast your favorite song, or literally light traveling across the universe, a wave is essentially just a traveling disturbance. Now, to really grasp how these disturbances travel, we need to break down the anatomy of a wave. Let's imagine a perfectly smooth, idealized ocean wave. There are three main pieces of the puzzle you need to know. First up is the period, which physicists represent with a capital T. This is simply the amount of time it takes for one complete up and down motion. Second, we have the frequency, or lowercase f. This is just how many of those cycles happen every single second. It's the inverse of the period, so 1 divided by t. And third is the wavelength, represented by that cool-looking Greek letter, lambda. This is the actual physical distance between identical parts of the wave. Think of it like taking a tape measure from the peak of one crest to the very next peak. Okay, now that we know the basic parts, let's get to the formula. How fast does this disturbance actually travel? Well, we call this the wave velocity, and the fundamental equation that holds true for pretty much all types of waves is this. Wave velocity equals frequency times wavelength. In math symbols, that's v sub w equals f times lambda. It's a beautifully simple way to calculate the exact speed at which that energy moves from point A to point B. Let's make this concrete with a real-world example. Imagine a seagull just resting out there on the ocean surface. The gull bobs up and down on waves that have a wavelength of exactly 10.0 meters apart. The time it takes for that gull to make one complete up and down bob, which remember is our period, is 5.00 seconds. So using what we just learned, what is the wave velocity?
Well, if we take our formula, we know velocity equals wavelength divided by the period. So we simply divide that 10.0 meter wavelength by the 5.00 second period. 10 divided by 5, and that gives us exactly 2.00 meters per second. That is the actual speed the wave's energy is zipping across the water, even while our little seagull mostly just rides it up and down.
Wait, hold on a second. Let's pause for a quick pretension check. We know how to calculate speed now, but what about the actual size of the wave? Does a massive, towering wave travel faster than a tiny ripple? In other words, does the height change its propagation speed? The answer here might actually surprise you. The size of the disturbance, which scientists call the amplitude, is completely independent of the speed of propagation. Picture taking a large bowl of water and gently dropping a tiny cork into it. You get a certain wave speed rippling outward. Now, take that exact same cork and drop it from way higher up, making a much bigger splash and a taller wave. That taller wave, it propagates outward at the exact same speed. Amplitude and wave velocity simply do not depend on each other. Crazy, right? So, the absolutely crucial takeaway so far is that waves transmit energy, not matter. But exactly how they transmit that energy actually divides our physical world into two main camps: transverse waves and longitudinal waves. First up, let's explore transverse waves. In a transverse wave, the disturbance is perpendicular to the direction the wave is actually traveling. So if the wave's energy is moving horizontally across the room, the physical disturbance is moving vertically up and down. A great analogy is plucking a guitar string. The string itself vibrates vertically up and down, but the actual wave travels horizontally along the length of the string. And fun fact, electromagnetic waves, like the visible light you're using to see right now, behave in this exact same transverse way.
Now, let's contrast that with the second type, longitudinal waves, which you'll sometimes hear called compressional waves. Here, the disturbance is parallel to the direction of propagation. So instead of up and down, they push and pull in the exact same direction they are traveling. The ultimate everyday example of this is a sound wave. When a speaker pumps out bass, it rapidly pushes the air back and forth, creating these periodic variations in pressure that travel horizontally straight to your ear. It literally compresses the fluid, in this case the air in the room, to shove the energy forward.
Now, you might be sitting there thinking, okay, cool, perpendicular versus parallel. But wait, why is it actually important to differentiate between these two types in the real world? Why does it matter to us? Well, our source material explains this perfectly. It says in the different types of waves, energy can propagate in a different direction relative to the motion. This is important to understand how different types of waves affect the materials around them. Basically, the specific type of wave dictates exactly how a physical material, like a building or a bridge or a window, is going to be stressed or impacted when that wave hits it. And there is no better or, frankly, more terrifying example of this than earthquakes. Earthquakes are incredibly fascinating because they generate both wave types simultaneously. They send out P waves, which are those longitudinal compressional waves we talked about, and they also send out S waves, which are transverse shear waves. But here is the literal life-saving detail. They travel at different speeds through the Earth. By measuring the exact time difference between when the super-fast P waves hit a seismograph and when the slower S waves finally arrive, scientists can calculate exactly how far away the earthquake's epicenter is. Okay, let's lock this in before we finish. What are the absolute must-remember takeaways from this explainer? Number 1, waves move energy from place to place, not the physical matter itself. Number 2, to find a wave's velocity, just multiply its frequency by its wavelength. Number 3, transverse waves have a perpendicular up and down disturbance. And number 4, longitudinal waves have a parallel push and pull disturbance. So we've thoroughly covered how a single, solitary wave behaves. But here's a thought. What happens out in the ocean, or in a crowded concert hall, when two independent waves crash into each other at the exact same time and in the exact same physical space? Well, that brings us to our next logical topic, superposition and interference. You definitely won't want to miss that one. Keep questioning the physical world around you, and I'll see you in the next explainer.